Railways have turned the world upside down, cutting paths through harsh mountain ranges and deep gorges. But not every route is safe. There are such railways that frighten you, fascinate you, and make you reconsider the very concept of travel. In front of you is a top 10 of the most dangerous railways on the planet, where every kilometer traveled feels like a real duel between human beings and nature. So as not to miss new incredible stories, subscribe to the channel. Devil's Nose is a legendary section of the Trans-Andean Railway that connects Alausi and Sibambe. It runs through the harsh mountains of the Andes, where the very attempt to build a line was considered almost madness. The route stretches for more than 12 kilometers, and the difference in elevation reaches almost 900 meters. The train is literally forced to crawl up the slope, moving in zigzags along a narrow ledge, as if balancing on the edge of an abyss. Construction began in the year 1872 and was completed only in the year 1905. 33 years of struggle with crumbling cliffs, impregnable precipices, and dizzying heights. This route is called one of the most difficult engineering structures of its time. Once, passengers used to sit right on the roofs of the carriages to get a better view of the boundless mountains, sudden drops, and sharp curves. However, later the authorities banned this dangerous tradition. Now, everyone must stay inside. No more riding on the roofs. But even so, Devil's Nose remains a route that makes even the most resilient hearts beat faster. Here, every meter reminds you that the mountains do not forgive mistakes. The next point is New Zealand, the Napier-Gisborne line, a route that combines high bridges, sudden floods, and one unique feature: the railway crosses the runway of an operating airport. This is one of the few places in the world where trains and planes are forced to share the same space. Each crossing requires absolute precision. Any delay, the slightest mistake in coordination, and the consequences can be catastrophic. Despite strict control and perfect synchronization by air traffic controllers, such crossings are still considered high-risk zones. That is why the Napier-Gisborne route is included in the list of the most dangerous railways in the world. Next is Indonesia, the Argo Gedi line. This is a train that crosses deep valleys on high bridges, making the passengers' hearts stop for a moment every time the wheels roll onto the trembling steel spans. The route connects Jakarta and Bandung and is known for its comfort and scenic views. But behind the beauty lies tension. One of the most terrifying places is a railway bridge almost 60 meters high, thrown across an impressive chasm. The first time the train slowly moves out onto this span, almost every passenger feels slight dizziness and a chill under the skin. The height does its job. The next stop is the United States, the famous Georgetown Loop Railway. This is one of the most spectacular and, at the same time, one of the most unsettling routes in the Rocky Mountains. A small section, only about 4.5 miles long, climbs 640 feet, twisting between mountain ledges and narrowing canyons. The main highlight of the route is the Devil's Gate High Bridge, rising above the abyss. It seems almost weightless, as if hanging in the air. Below is a deep canyon. Above, a narrow metal arch along which the train slowly moves. This line was built back in the 19th century to serve the mining industry, but it impressed people so much with its audacity that over time it became a true tourist legend. Today, those who come here want to feel not only the breathtaking beauty, but also a light fear of heights. And now, China, the Qinghai-Tibet Railway. This journey is called the Road of the Roof of the World, and not without reason. It is the highest altitude railway on the planet. Trains cross mountain ranges at an elevation of 16,640 feet, pass over frozen permafrost plains, and traverse more than 675 bridges. Oxygen cylinders are installed in every carriage, and there is always a doctor on board. Otherwise, it is simply impossible. Oxygen deficiency at this altitude is a very real and dangerous thing. Despite all the safety measures, There are known cases where passengers have still died from acute mountain sickness, especially while crossing the Tangula Range, one of the harshest sections of the route. This railway amazes with its height, but the next route impresses with something else: unmatched steepness. The Swiss Pilatus Railway is a world record holder in terms of steepness. The average gradient is 35%, and the maximum reaches 48%. It is as if the train is climbing up a vertical wall. The route is short, only about 2/8 of a mile, but the elevation gain exceeds 5,000 feet. Every bit of distance here literally bites into the mountain slope, making even the most self-confident passengers breathe more often. On top of that, the entire system was built more than 100 years ago. Worn rails, antique mechanisms, all this adds sharpness and emphasizes how fragile human engineering genius can be compared to the power of nature. Now, Australia. The Kuranda Scenic Railway leads through wet tropical forests, cliffs, and rock walls, as if created especially for those who seek adventure. Launched in the year 1891, this line twists along the steep slopes of the Great Dividing Range. The panoramas are incredible: waterfalls, dense jungle, vertical ledges. But behind the beauty lies danger. Despite the relatively short length of the route, the ascent here is very steep, and the line passes through unstable terrain where rockfalls are an everyday occurrence. In the year 2010, a tragic incident occurred. A sudden landslide buried a passing train, injuring many passengers. This episode still reminds everyone that nature here is always in charge. Further on is Argentina, the legendary Train to the Clouds. This journey runs through the very heart of the Andes, where the air is so thin that it feels as if the clouds are scratching against the windows of the carriages. The average elevation of the route is 13,800 feet. The train crosses 29 bridges, 21 tunnels, and 13 viaducts, as if climbing a multi-level staircase to the sky. The scenery is stunning, but the harsh mountains often break the equipment. At times, trains have stopped right in the middle of the route, and helicopters had to be called in for evacuation. Now, about 80% of the route has been replaced by buses. It is simply too dangerous to keep the entire line in operation. The next stop is Japan. The Aso Minami line runs right at the foot of Mount Aso, one of the most active volcanoes in the country. This is a place where the Earth itself constantly reminds you of its restless nature. The train moves along a zone where a sudden ash outburst or a sharp eruption can happen at any moment. Each trip here is a little challenge to fate. Passengers look out the window and realize that beside them is a living volcano that breathes, rumbles, and changes every second. In the year 2016, a strong earthquake seriously damaged the line. Some sections were completely destroyed, and operations were suspended for many months. Imagine, you are riding in a carriage, and suddenly Mount Aso wakes up. What would you do first? That is exactly the question often asked of tourists, and many admit that the journey along this line makes them think deeply about nature and their own fragility. Aso Minami remains a route where beauty lives side by side with anxiety, and every kilometer is filled with a sense of unpredictability. Now we move to South Africa. The Outeniqua-Chuchoe Railway is scenic, romantic, and at the same time dangerous. This line, more than 42 years old, connects George and Knysna, passing along the famous garden route. The train runs right along the coast, over old bridges, many of which have long needed major repairs. The picture takes your breath away. The ocean splashes below, ahead are wooden spans that creak under the weight of the train. But the danger cannot be hidden. Due to the dilapidated bridges, the train risks ending up in the water at any moment. Despite this, a journey on the Outeniqua-Chuchoe remains one of the most beautiful in the world. But beauty here goes hand in hand with fear, and every passenger feels it when the train slowly crosses yet another swaying bridge. Next is Mexico and the Veracruz Railway. This is a route where travelers are threatened not only by harsh nature, but also by the human factor. The line crosses mountains, canyons, and old viaducts. But the main thing is that the region is notorious for frequent attacks by armed gangs. Robberies happen regularly, and many sections of the railway are considered dangerous, even for the employees themselves. In the year 2020, a train transporting Volkswagen cars was brazenly attacked, derailed, and overturned at night. Such stories are not rare. That is why the Veracruz Railway frightens passengers not only with the height of the bridges and the depth of the gorges, but also with a threat that can appear at any moment. The next route is India and the legendary Pamban Bridge. This is the longest sea railway structure in the country, opened back in the year 1914. The bridge connects the mainland with Rameswaram Island, as if stretching a thread of track over the raging ocean. The bridge has an unusual design. Its central part lifts up to let ships pass. It was a real engineering miracle of its time. The mechanism worked even in an era when no one had even dreamed of modern technology. But the beauty hides a threat. Every major storm threatens to wash the train away, along with the track. The height of the waves sometimes reaches dozens of meters, and it seems as if the train is literally floating above the ocean, completely surrounded by water. In the year 1964, a terrible tragedy occurred. A huge wave covered a passing train, taking the lives of 150 people. This event has forever inscribed Pamban Bridge in history as one of the most dangerous railway crossings in the world. Experienced travelers say, before the trip, always check the weather. It is all too easy to underestimate the power of the ocean. We continue our journey and move to Southeast Asia, to the infamous Death Railway. This railway was built during the Second World War, when thousands of prisoners of war and civilians were forced to build a line through jungles, mountains, and rivers. The length of the railway is about 258 miles. But the most horrifying thing is that it cost more than 100,000 lives. People were driven to work in inhuman conditions, without food, without sleep, under the scorching sun and the lash of guards. Every meter of the route, every bridge support, is a memorial to those who never returned from these tropical hellish conditions. That is why today, the line is called the Death Railway. Now, the surviving sections have been turned into a tourist route, but every carriage here travels along the traces of tragedy. For many people, this place has become a living monument, reminding us of the price of war. Next, again the United States, but now a different climate, different dangers, and a completely different character of the route. The Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad connects Colorado and New Mexico, following a classic 64-mile mountain path. Here, the train climbs to Cumbres Pass at an elevation of 10,000 feet. In winter, this area is buried under giant snowdrifts. The snow reaches 12 meters. Movement in such conditions becomes a trial. The equipment breaks, the tracks are buried, the wind roars among the spruce-covered slopes. Today, the railway is used mainly for tourists, but even in this mode it is often closed. The reason is the high risk of forest fires. Any spark from a steam locomotive or brakes can become the start of a catastrophe, because the dry mountain forests ignite instantly. Every trip on the Cumbres and Toltec is a mixture of nostalgia, danger, and incredible beauty of the American Southwest. Now, one of the most famous routes in Europe, the Bernina Express. It is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and deservedly so. The railway passes through fairy tale alpine landscapes, connecting Switzerland and Italy. Along the way, the train crosses more than 190 bridges and 55 tunnels. The route constantly runs along the edges of mountain slopes, over gorges, above glaciers, over valleys, where in winter you cannot hear a single sound except the wind. Passengers see Bernina, one of the most beautiful glaciers in Europe, azure mountain lakes, and vertical rock walls. But behind this beauty lies risk. Avalanches here are a common occurrence, and more than once the railway has been under threat of destruction. The Bernina Express is a line that shows both the grandeur of nature and its ruthlessness. Even modern technology cannot give a 100% guarantee that the elements will not interfere with the journey. We move to the United Kingdom, to the coastal Dawlish Railway, located in the county of Devon. This is one of the most scenic, but also one of the most vulnerable sections of the country's railway network. The line runs right along the sea edge, along a 4-mile stretch between Devon and Cornwall. On one side, the train rests against vertical cliffs, on the other, against the raging ocean. Here, even a small storm can turn a trip into a trial. In the year 2014, a huge storm destroyed the breakwater, and the section of the line literally hung in the air. The railway track remained suspended over the drop, while waves roared below it. And in the year 2020, the situation repeated itself. Despite lengthy repair work, a new series of storms once again destroyed the line. The blows of the waves were so strong that they shattered carriage windows and injured passengers. A journey along the Dawlish line is always a risk. A storm can strike at any moment, and the sea is so close that passengers sometimes even complain of seasickness right on the train. In India, trains will soon pass over the highest single-span arch railway bridge in the world, the bridge over the Chenab River. Its length is about 1.3 kilometers. To feel the height, it is enough just to look down into the darkness of the valley where the riverbed disappears. This train promises to carry you through mountains, over gorges, and as if across oceans. But not all routes were built for comfort. Many appeared thanks to blood, fire, and despair. Behind their grandeur hide horrifying stories that cannot be seen behind the beautiful facade. I ride the train every day, and the difference between an ordinary route and such railways is colossal. On the surface, everything seems fine: landscapes, people, the trip. But when you learn what lies under the rails, you are amazed that such things are still allowed. Would you dare to stand on the Chenab Bridge and look down into the abyss beneath you? If yes, write 0. If no, write 1. Let us go further, because far from all railways are created for convenience. On the contrary, many exist solely for survival, built at the cost of blood, fires, and despair. Beneath majestic beauty lies a horrifying price. In Bangladesh, the railway is a true artery of life. On holidays, when the flow of passengers increases, thousands of people climb onto the roofs of the carriages, cling to the windows, squeeze between couplers, anything just to get home. No fences, no tickets, no safety guarantees, only pure desire to survive and to reach the destination. Every year, people are killed by electric shocks, fall from the roofs, get trapped between carriages, but still they continue to ride. Because missing a train means missing something important: a grandmother's funeral, a daughter's wedding, or payday. In Bangladesh, more than 3,000 kilometers of railways run along decaying tracks, where every year dozens of people die from electric shocks or falls from overcrowded trains. Especially during holidays like Eid al-Fitr, when the entire country is literally hanging on the roofs of trains. Would you dare to climb onto the roof of such a train? Write what you think. And now, the complete opposite of chaos. The Thai Maeklong railway market is a dance of life and death, in which trains and people share space literally centimeter by centimeter. Every few hours, a whistle sounds. Traders instantly remove awnings, tables, and baskets. Seconds later, a train passes just a few centimeters from bags of fruit and boxes of fish. And then life continues again, as if nothing had happened. For the locals, this is a tradition and a way of survival. For tourists, it is an incredible, almost unreal attraction. There are no stations, no fences, only coordination, habit, and trust. Would you dare to sit and eat right at the edge of the rails, knowing that in a couple of seconds a train will rush past? Now we move north, to where the earth does not burn, but freezes. Here, along the rails go giant snowplow trains cutting through Canada, Russia, and Northern Europe. The danger here is not crowds nor chasms. It is frost, silence, and snow that can bend steel. In these regions, trains are real lifelines between snowbound cities and villages. When a blizzard begins, the rails disappear under a layer of snow higher than a person, sometimes higher than houses. Cities are buried in snow, but the trains keep going. Huge engines with massive plows on their front rush forward like iron whales, breaking through icy chaos. The snow reaches 5 meters, covering signs, platforms, and abandoned cars. Tourists call it beauty. Ticket inspectors call it a fight for life. In the cab, there is almost zero visibility. The brakes skid. Every moment is a decision on the edge. One mistake, and you are not just stuck. You are stuck kilometers away from help, buried under ice. In Siberia, there are settlements where the train is the only way out into the big world. Miss it, and you are cut off from civilization until spring. Locals joke, the train will not take you home. It will simply give you a head start. Would you get on such a train, knowing that ahead lies almost zero visibility? We continue our journey, and now we rise to where trains seem no longer meant to exist. High above sea level, above the clouds, runs one of the most dangerous routes in South America, the Argentine Train to the Clouds, Tren a las Nubes. The train climbs to an elevation of more than 4,200 meters, higher than some commercial flights, and everyone who looks out the window sees clouds stretching below the rails as if the train were riding through the air. But do not let the beauty deceive you. This is a journey for the brave. Construction of the route began in the year 1921 and stretched over 27 years. The reason was not slowness, but that the terrain was too brutal for traditional methods. The engineers had to rewrite the rules. Here there are 29 bridges, 21 tunnels, 2 full spirals hanging over abysses, sharp curves, viaducts seemingly stuck to cliffs. It looks like a route built on the very edge of what is possible. Among the locals, there were legends that in the year 1960, the entire train had to be evacuated in a matter of seconds. Too many passengers lost consciousness because of altitude sickness. Official reports were silent, but the mountains were not. Their wind remembers everything. And in the year 2005, powerful downpours washed away part of the track, and the train was halted for almost 6 years. The line was reinforced, repaired, safety was increased, and yet landslides and storms still threaten the route. This is a journey at the limits of human capability. If you could take only one thing on this train, courage, oxygen, or a camera, what would you choose? We move on to another legendary place, Ecuador, Devil's Nose, Nariz del Diablo. That is what they call a mountain peak that seems to grow straight out of the Andes. The air here is thin, and the history is saturated with courage and pain. Just 12 kilometers of track took more than 2,000 workers' lives. Today, tourists see a picturesque route, zigzags along sheer cliffs, views of mountain gorges. But under the rails lie bones and stories that make hands tremble. In the year 1899, Ecuador decided to connect the port of Guayaquil with the capital Quito. But the Andes are not the kind of mountains that give up their peaks without a fight, especially Devil's Cliff with its 800-meter precipices. To tame this rock, engineers came up with a technique unknown at the time. The railway climbs in zigzags, forcing the train to go forward, then backward, then forward again, as if deceiving gravity. But calculations were only part of the horror. The main threat came from the boundless jungle filled with venomous snakes, jaguars, and tropical diseases. Workers, mostly enslaved people and deceived migrants from China and Jamaica, were killed by disease and predators faster than by cliffs. Today, tourists admire the view, but every steel rail here lies above a silent cemetery where death and grandeur are mixed together. Now we move to a route no less frightening, to the Chennai-Rameswaram Sea Bridge, one of the most dangerous railway routes in Asia. At first glance, it seems that the train is traveling along a narrow strip of land. But in reality, this is a railway bridge more than 2 kilometers long, lying directly above the roaring sea. It connects mainland India with Rameswaram Island, and every meter of it withstands storms, tides, and hurricane-force winds. As soon as the wind speed exceeds 58 kilometers per hour, train traffic is completely stopped. This is a direct reaction to the tragedy of the year 1964, when Cyclone Pan, accelerating to 240 kilometers per hour, destroyed bridge spans and swept away an entire train. More than 200 people died. Local fishermen still tell stories about ghostly lights and the rumble of spirit ships that night. But the bridge continues to operate, not out of bravery, but out of necessity. It leads pilgrims to Holy Land. Engineers check it every day as if it were a sacred object that must not be left unattended. We leave Asia and plunge into the cold north, to where 19th century gold prospectors left a trace like a scar on the body of the mountains. The White Pass and Yukon route cuts through the ranges between Alaska and Canada, repeating the path of the Klondike gold rush of the 1890s. This narrow-gauge railway climbs more than 910 meters in just 20 kilometers of track, without tunnels, only sharp curves, shaking wooden bridges and precipices that make your fingers go cold. Thousands of workers, driven there without warm clothing and sometimes without shoes, froze to death right on the route. Sudden avalanches swept away entire teams, nervous explosions, rock falls, dropping tools and carriages. All this claimed lives every single day. And even now, local locomotive drivers say, if you travel in winter and peer into the icy slopes, you can see boots, pickaxes, and shadows of former prospectors frozen in the ice, a reminder of those who never returned. Dangerous railways are not just routes along which trains travel. They are stories about courage, engineering geniuses, catastrophes, losses, and human persistence. Some lines have defeated time and become tourist legends. Others continue to threaten travelers every time a train starts moving. And still others have remained daring dreams frozen on the pages of projects. Each of them is a reminder that the world is still full of places where human beings walk along a thin edge, conquering the elements and overcoming the impossible.